Today, we're talking about an old giant in the healthcare industry that I came across while researching Johnson & Johnson. Well, J&J is going to have to wait to get its own video because we're taking a look at how Bristol-Myers Squibb is breathing new life into its company. Hey everybody, welcome back to Dollars and Cents, helping you make sense of making dollars. Remember that if you enjoy the informational investing content on this channel, to like and subscribe. Also, be sure to check out the link in the description and join my Discord so you can come hang out with me and some other cool people from this community. With that, let's get right into it. Bristol-Myers Squibb is another one of those really old companies. Edward Squibb founded his part of the company in 1858, initially as an advocate for higher standards in the medical industry, a noble cause indeed. During the American Civil War, it became a major supplier of medical supplies to the Union Army, and that's just crazy to think about, that you can today own a part of a company with roots in the Civil War. At least to me anyway. On the other side, the Bristol-Myers half was founded by two gentlemen in 1887 when they bought the Clinton Pharma Company and renamed it to Bristol-Myers, with absolutely no connection yet to Squibb. This part of the company developed household products like toothpaste and Windex. After years of acquisitions, Bristol-Myers and the Squibb Company finally merged in 1989 to create the giant we have today in the healthcare industry. BMS primarily focuses on developing and marketing new drug patents and treatments for serious diseases such as cardiovascular, diabetes, and HIV/AIDS. Some of the drugs that BMS has developed include Orencia, Opdivo, Eliquis, and Revlimid. BMS's two largest drugs and patents accounts for about 60% of their total revenue. These and two other drugs developed by BMS bring in a hefty 75% of the company's total income. That's a pretty big chunk of its money going into a changing healthcare industry. However, we'll talk more about drug patents, BMS's heavy focus and reliance on these patents, and how the acquisition of the company Celgene and others might just be changing the focus a little later. Instead, on the note of money and health, let's take a look at BMS's financial health. First, we see it has a market cap of $140 billion and a PE of 8.33. Very nice to see such a low PE, especially nowadays. Scrolling down, we come to the income statement. The first thing we like to look at is to see if they're increasing their revenue year over year, and we see that they are, by a considerable margin as well. Their 2018 revenue was $22.5 billion, and their 2020 revenue was $42.5 billion. Most of this was because of their acquisition of Celgene, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit. Moving to the balance sheet, we see assets totaling $118 billion and liabilities of $80.6 billion. Just as a side note, some of the financial data is skewed because of their recent acquisition of Celgene, so not all the data will be here. This is also why we see a large gap up from 2019 to 2020, so just something to keep in mind. They have a total short-term debt of $51.6 billion and $16.4 billion in cash. So while they don't have enough cash on hand to pay off all their near-term debts, they do have a substantial amount of cash on hand on the balance sheet. Always good to see. Finally, we see that they've been increasing their free cash flow over the past 3 years as well, from just under $5 billion to $13.3 billion. Now, what I like to do is take the average free cash flow, which is revenue minus capital expenses, from the past 3 years and multiply it by 20 to get a fair value estimate of what might be a good price for them today. I don't so much like trying to project forward cash flows to get a price just because it's incredibly hard to predict where a company will go even over the next 3 years. I personally don't have anything against this, and I do think it is a perfectly valid form of analysis, but it's not my preference. Anyway, we have an average free cash flow over the past 3 years of $8.51 billion. Multiply this by 20 and we get an estimated market cap of $170 billion. Their current market cap is $140 billion. With this, I believe that Bristol-Myers Squibb is undervalued by up to 18% from current levels. Of course, we can't talk about Bristol-Myers Squibb without mentioning my favorite part of investing, their dividend. They've been paying dividends for 31 years and have been consistently increasing their dividend for 14 years. Their dividend yield is about 3.11%, which is above the market average of 2.22%. Their payout ratio is only 25.18%, which is astounding and allows for tremendous dividend growth. Their 5-year annual dividend growth rate is only 4.62%, which on the surface seems terrible, but upon further inspection, we see they increased their dividend by 9.5% last year. This is most likely because of their acquisition of Celgene, the company that we briefly mentioned earlier. With this acquisition comes a huge boost to revenue and also allows for a faster dividend growth rate moving forward. I wouldn't be surprised to see the 5-year dividend growth rate shoot up to 9 or 10% over the next few years. They pay quarterly dividends right now, so if you buy one share for $62.93, you'll receive 49 cents per quarter, or $1.96 every year. As dividend grows, this number will of course increase. While I think the company's finances are currently healthy, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Why BMS wasn't the best company to invest in for quite a few years, and the risks associated with investing in BMS. Now, to give you some context, let's first look at patents. We earlier mentioned that BMS has a heavy reliance and focus on patents, that its major revenue generators are the two for Eliquis and Revlimid. The sector of healthcare that BMS functions in is dependent on drug patents, or more specifically, the chemical patent essential to an exclusivity deal on a type of drug. If a company develops a drug and chemical patent that gets approved by the FDA, the company owns the rights to that specific drug and patent for 20 years in the United States. While BMS has a few patents, including those for Revlimid and Eliquis, it doesn't have nearly as much as some of its competitors. In fact, BMS's catalog of patents and drugs pales in comparison to the immense library of drug patents owned by Johnson & Johnson and Merck & Co. Not only that, it's almost been 20 years for Revlimid and Eliquis. Their patents are going to expire, and soon. It's only a matter of time before generic versions of these drugs start hitting the market. Not a good prognosis for BMS. This could be troubling to see for any investor looking at Bristol-Myers Squibb. Besides expiring patents, another issue plaguing Bristol-Myers Squibb in the public eye is, well, its colorful history with legal trouble. In 2000, BMS essentially had a monopoly on Taxol, a cancer treatment, with American Bioscience. Lawsuits brought against Bristol-Myers by several U.S. states alleged that the company had performed fraudulent actions that barred the generic drug makers from making generic, cheaper versions costing millions of dollars. Not only that, the IRS alleged that BMS owes over $1 billion. Yes, $1 billion in taxes from quote-unquote offshore patent schemes. Yeah. Not great. Then we get to the actual healthcare system itself and how it's changing. It's very possible that the American healthcare systems will look very different over the next 5 to 10 years. Companies are going to need to adapt. Bristol-Myers Squibb is going to need to adapt. If it can't adapt to this ever-changing landscape and move forward with new patents, drugs, treatments, and other avenues, Bristol-Myers Squibb could very well fall to the wayside as other companies forge ahead, just as it had done in the past. But there is still some hope too for Bristol-Myers Squibb's future health. With the acquisition of Celgene, the company we've now mentioned several times, BMS has demonstrated that they are starting to have a larger focus on developing new drug patents. The acquisition itself is still unproven to be effective in boosting revenues over the long term, sure, but it's a terrific step and one definitely needed. With those patents on Revlimid and Eliquis set to expire, BMS needs this shot in the arm to develop new drugs. If we look at Bristol-Myers Squibb's website under the In the Pipeline section, we see that they have over 50 new compounds they are developing to treat over 40 diseases. Truly an incredible pace with their new partner in Celgene. Plus, despite its many legal troubles, BMS actually has a great ability to both build strong relationships with other companies and make very smart acquisitions. Case in point, BMS worked with other large drug makers to co-develop new drugs. Some of these companies include Janssen and Pfizer, both companies that have played large roles in the commercial releases of vaccines against COVID-19. BMS has also been using its tremendous cash balances to make smart acquisitions that should propel it forward, such as acquisitions with Celgene and Myocardia. I believe these acquisitions and partnerships will prove crucial to the success of Bristol-Myers Squibb moving forward. At its current price, I think Bristol-Myers Squibb could be a great investment. From its ever-expanding drug pipeline, acquisitions of innovative companies like Celgene, to its professional relationships with other companies like Pfizer, Bristol-Myers Squibb can hopefully move out of the shadow of its many legal scandals and recommit to developing new, innovative, life-saving treatments for some of the worst diseases known to man. In my opinion, Bristol-Myers Squibb is ready to reclaim its former glory as a titan in the healthcare industry. And even if it doesn't, I'll still collect that sweet, sweet dividend from this healthcare giant regardless. With that, be sure to leave your opinion of Bristol-Myers Squibb in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see all of you in the next episode of Dollars and Cents.